Welcome to Say Yes to Chocolate, the podcast where better is the goal, not perfect.
We're your hosts, Dr. Becky and Sara B, bringing you simple, science-backed wellness with a side of real life and a sprinkle of chocolate love, because balance should taste like joy.
If you're ready to simplify your health and thrive in your 40s, 50s, and beyond, you're in the right place. Let's do this.
Hey, beautiful human. Welcome back to Say Yes to Chocolate. I'm Dr. Becky, and I'm here with my longtime friend and curious co-host, Sara B.
We're kicking off our first month with a topic that we think deserves way more attention, your bones. Not exactly chocolatey, but stay with us, it's important.
It really is. I spent 17 years in private practice dealing with nothing really but bones, muscles, ligaments, tendons, keeping people active and that kind of stuff. And I can tell you that most people never think about their bones.
No.
It's probably the biggest system in the body that gets neglected until there's a problem. That's our goal for this first kickoff, is to talk about why they're important and bring a little bit more attention to a really important topic. I think when most people think about bone health, they really focus on bone density, and rightfully so, because that's been the focus, especially for women's health. As you age, postmenopausal, we get into that kind of season of life where our doctor starts talking to us about our bone density and getting a bone scan called a DEXA scan. You get your T-score, and then based on that number, you are either normal bone density in a class, what we call osteopenic, or the very early stages of bone loss or thinning bones, or the actual bone disease, osteoporosis, which is a significant amount of bone loss, bone density loss, and can leave you particularly prone to fractures. But here's the thing, bone density is only part of the story.
So randomly, they started talking to me when I was 40 about bone density, but not really a full picture of it, right?
Sure.
So like my yearly checkup. So they are starting to talk a little bit earlier. So even if you're like, hey, I'm only 40, I don't know if this is for me, it actually is, because that conversation is starting younger and younger.
It is starting younger and younger, which is really good. But did they offer you a DEXA scan or just kind of bring it to your attention?
No, they just told me to take calcium and D3.
Yeah, that's pretty standard.
So, I mean, like, nothing crazy, but they're trying to bring it to your radar a little bit earlier now.
Which is awesome, yes.
But we also have found that bone density isn't the whole story. So what are we missing?
When we think about bone health and bone density and staying strong as we age, really the whole purpose that we're even having that conversation is in the realm of fracture prevention, so that we don't break a bone, mainly in the spine or in our actual hip joints. When we talk about bone density, one thing that we're missing is also bone quality, because not only do we want those bones to be nice and dense and compact, but we also want them to be elastic and flexible so that they can absorb an impact. Because if all your bones are is dense and compact, but they're brittle and it's not healthy tissue, that bone is still going to break. And so we really want to focus on bone quality, bone density, and that will give us a much better picture of true bone strength and fracture resistance.
Sure. So what are some things that could possibly, everyday life-wise, cause a fracture? Besides, obviously, like slipping on the ice or falling, but what other, like if you are having thinning or osteoporotic bones, what are some things that people should be worrying about?
So yeah, I mean, even something as simple as bending over and sneezing, or picking something up in the wrong position, being startled by your grandchild and having them jump on your back, tripping over a curb and catching yourself, but it's a very sudden jerk. Any of those types of movements, if your bone strength, i.e. your quality and your density, are both compromised and your bone strength is at serious risk, really any of those, just living life, really, can pose a problem. It's very scary.
It's very scary. And things to be thinking about. I don't think most people think about the fact that sneezing could possibly fracture their back or fracture their spine.
Right. Hopefully the narrative is changing now, like I said, as if doctors are bringing it up a little bit earlier in your wellness visits. But unfortunately, a lot of times that's when people are actually get their first DEXA scan,
right,
or are first diagnosed with osteoporosis, is when an unexplained fracture happens, whether it's a compression fracture in the spine from sneezing or breaking a hip.
And we see that every day in our wellness center.
Yes.
We have a lot of people coming in to talk to us about that.
Yes.
So let's just like deep dive into this just a little bit.
Sure.
So you could go in for a DEXA scan.
Yep.
You could be like in not horrible T-score alone, but you're still fracturing. Like we do have some people who are in that situation, and that truly is because the inside of their bone or the quality and the strength of their bone isn't as strong as it should be, or what's causing that.
Yeah, let's deep dive into just a little bit of an anatomy lesson. This is my wheelhouse. So when we talk about bone density, which is what we're trying to evaluate in a traditional DEXA scan, which is an X-ray beam, what it's literally measuring is the outside cortical part of your bone. So your bone has an outside shell. If you are on YouTube and can see that, I'm attempting to make a circle with my fingers. And that is actually what the DEXA scan, the X-ray beam, is measuring the strength of. But on the inside of our bone is what we call trabecular bone. So we have cortical bone on the outside and then trabecular bone on the inside. And the inside of the bone is much more honeycomb-like. So that honeycomb, that bony matrix, is where we get the elasticity and the flexibility of the bone. Okay. Cortical bone holds us upright, and it is the density of the bone, but the inside of the bone is the quality portion of the bone. And unfortunately, with a DEXA scan, with an X-ray beam, we can't measure the inside of the bone. There is some new technology that's giving us a better view of the actual inside of the bone. But a DEXA scan is just the cortical portion of the bone. So trying to evaluate bone quality, the gold standard of that right now is there's some blood marker tests that we can utilize to see how well we're creating new bone and how well we're getting rid of old bone. Let's explain that.
So I really like the analogy of like a candy bar. Mm-hmm. That's something that I kind of use a lot, right? So a candy bar, right, you have kind of a harder shell. I mean, obviously our bones are harder than chocolate, but yes. But you have a hard shell, and then inside, like if you break it open, you get that honeycomby look. So it's kind of like
a Kit Kat.
A Kit Kat or like a Milky Way, like because it's kind of that nuggety stuff. So
yes,
that's kind of like an easier way to think about how does that bone look. You have that hard shell. When you break it in, it has that honeycomb or that wafer on the inside.
Yes.
True bone strength is going to be strong from the inside out.
Correct. It's going to be all of the layers. So you have a healthy cortical bone, a healthy outside portion of the bone, but then you also have a really healthy, strong bone matrix on the inside of the bone as well.
Yes.
Bone has a natural life cycle where we're constantly building new bone and clearing out old bone. We can use, a candy bar analogy is fantastic, but to understand like the clearing out and the rebuilding, construction is perfect. Mm-hmm. So you are constantly laying down new bone. It's nice and healthy. It's elastic. It has all the nutrients it needs to be metabolically active. The new bone is created by cells called osteoblasts. And then you have bone that's been around for a while and has been used and abused and tolerated all of the daily activities that we've done to it. That old bone needs to be cleared out. It's kind of like skin sloughing off. Our whole body regenerates. And as long as that process is kind of a one-to-one, you maintain bone density and bone quality. So you have new healthy bone that's elastic and able to withstand all kinds of things that we throw at it. And then we have old bone that's clearing out. And that old bone is kind of brittle and icky and it's breaking apart and it's not good quality and it's also not dense. The problem as we age is our bone builders, the laying down of new bone starts to slow down dramatically. And the clearing of the old bone keeps the same pace or might slow down a little bit, but it's not one-to-one. So we can end up with thinning bones, and then we can ultimately end up with osteoporosis. DEXA scanning is the gold standard right now to kind of evaluate how well our body is going through that process. But like I said, it doesn't give the whole picture.
So what are some other things we can be looking at or like adding to that DEXA scan?
Because our bones are metabolically active, they're actually very, very alive. They're full of blood supply. The bone cells, when they're active, both the bone builders, the osteoblasts, and the bone cleaners, the osteoclasts, produce chemical messengers, if you will, when they're metabolically active. And the more metabolically active they are, the more of those chemical messengers show up in our blood work. So there's actually 4 blood tests that you can have your doctor order that will give us an idea of how well we're building new, healthy, elastic bone and how well we're clearing bone out. And then we get kind of a ratio of that process in the body. And when you combine that with a DEXA scan, you get a really good idea of bone quality and bone density, which gives us bone strength. You can also use those bone markers more frequently than a DEXA scan to see if any interventions or any lifestyle changes that you've done
and some of those bone markers, right? You kind of need a baseline because realistically, over time, what we're looking for is the changes in those markers.
Correct. There's
So,
one of them will give us kind of an idea of bone quality just in and of itself, but really what we need is to see a ratio between the interplay of those, and then also the increase or decrease over time. Yes.
okay. So it's kind of cool. In our bodies, we have a cleanup crew and a construction team.
Yeah.
Doing the work they need to do to keep us strong and upright.
Yes.
Because really, if our skeleton, our bones are weaker, our body's going to get weaker with it.
Yes. And then, of course, when you get weaker bones or your foundation weakens, everything that attaches to your foundation also weakens. So it leads to, you have challenges with muscle strength, ligaments and tendons, which can lead to a lot of back and joint pain and a lot of inflammation and arthritis. And I mean, it can start to just become a snowball. And of course, the less active you are and the less you move, the less healthy every other system in the body is as well.
Sure.
So that's why we talk about bone health, why bone health is so important, especially women's health.
Let's just say if someone is listening and they have a DEXA scan, they have low bone density, they have osteoporosis, should they be panicking? What are we doing with that information?
Okay, so first and foremost, no panic necessary. Panic is never necessary. It's just data, and it's just data that we need to get really curious on what the whole big picture is and what that data actually means. So it's just one score from your DEXA scan. It does, however, mean that we need to get curious about intervention and taking care of ourselves. Start by asking, am I moving my body in ways that builds bone strength? Spoiler alert, we're going to be talking about that in upcoming episodes because it actually takes a little bit more than I think most people are aware of. Other things, am I supporting my bone health with bone supporting nutrients? Again, it's way more than just calcium and vitamin D.
Yes.
There's K2. Protein is absolutely essential to build that trabecular bony matrix. Have I ever looked into my bone turnover labs? Have I visited with a bone specialist? Have I looked into alternative approaches to building bone strength? There's a lot of things that we can be doing, a lot of options.
A conversation I recently actually had with one of our sweet people is, which we're going to talk about next week, is about this other scan that Dr. Becky kind of alluded to.
Yes.
But she was talking about, she's like, I want to know what the inside of my bone is. I just want that data. And so I think the hardest thing is that when we do labs and have tests, it is so personal because it's us and it's our body. But there is, at some point, we just kind of have to be able to say, okay, this is information, this is data.
Yes.
What action do I need to take? Of course, there's going to be an emotional response. There always is going to be, because it's us, it's our life, our livelihood. But if there is just that moment, we can just take a break and go, okay, what can I do next?
Right. What do I do with this information?
What do I do with it? And I think that can be one of the biggest things that we can help with our mindset as well. Yes. I hope today that we were able to kind of help you understand a little bit more about a fuller picture of your bone health, not just that density, but the inside and that quality. Also, a great examination of like, what is the bone made of? Because that's something we don't ever talk about, right? We don't ever talk about our bone health until we have a diagnosis or a fracture. And so this is hopefully a way for you to preemptive and then also be able to get some of those blood markers done if you need to.
Absolutely.
I feel like the big say yes takeaway for this week is to not settle for half the story when it comes to your health and especially your bone health.
Totally agree. Say yes to understanding your body, building bones that are strong and resilient. Hopefully you have a little bit better of an understanding of why that's so important now. Knowing that it's not just about bone density. And more to come on that next week. We're going to be talking about what a DEXA scan actually is, which is the gold standard right now, and some really exciting new technology that we can use to evaluate bone quality utilizing ultrasound. So get your bone markers in, get your DEXA scan, and hopefully you have a little bit better understanding about why that's so important, especially us women as we get older and age. More to come next week, all about further evaluating bone strength and bone quality. So for now, go move, go nourish, and always say yes to chocolate.
Thanks for joining us. Thanks for hanging out with us on Say Yes to Chocolate.
If today's episode gave you a win, something to think about, or even just a smile, we'd love it if you'd subscribe, rate, and share it with a friend.
Want more? Join our email newsletter so you don't miss a beat and come find us on all the social channels at Say Yes to Chocolate Podcast for all the quick hints and tips.
And don't forget, you can always send us your questions or episode ideas. We love hearing from you.
Until next time, keep it simple, stay curious, and always say yes to chocolate.